Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Rasulillah wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Continuing our discussion on the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First name that we will discuss today is Al-Quddus, which we can translate as the Holy. And this is one of Allah Ta'ala's names and attributes of Kamal. This is one of the complete names or the whole names of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. It casts away any sign or any notion of deficiency. So when you say that Allah Ta'ala is Al-Quddus, it means that Allah Ta'ala is holy, meaning in His entirety, holy. In His entirety pure, in His entirety free of any deficiencies, of any limitations, okay? And anything that's negative that you could think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or any limitations or any deficiencies, we remember this name Al-Quddus to say, well, that's impossible, right? And this is one of the reasons why this discussion of the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so important, is because it's very common, as you hear me state all the time and everywhere and anywhere, that one of the things that you will find if you listen, if you pay attention to how people talk about God, not just Muslims, but how people talk about God or the divine or the great power in the universe or whatever word that they use, if you listen closely, you will see that they assume certain limitations to that power. You will notice that there are certain deficiencies to that power. And that's why we have these, not only do we have on these names, Lillahi al-asma' al-husna fad'uhu biha, to Allah belongs the beautiful names, call on Allah. So not only do we use these names in our devotional work, but this is also a way for us to teach us who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's another way of saying la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There's no ability or agency except by Allah ta'ala. So there's no deficiency, there's nothing that Allah can't do, there's nothing that Allah can't hear, there's no such thing as Allah has forgotten us, Allah doesn't care about us. Those type of phrases, if you listen to these phrases closely, and you remember this this name Al-Quddus, so that's impossible. Because there is no deficiency, there is no limitation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is completely holy. When we remember this name, we also remember Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is called Al-Quds. It's called the city that is holy, that is made holy and is made pure, and it is the first of our Qibla, and it is one of our 3 holy cities, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we remember Jerusalem, that may Allah ta'ala bring peace to that city and protect our holy sites, inshallah. Now, when it comes to our relationship, like what lessons do we take from this name? Imam al-Ghazali reminds us that he says, think of lofty things and think and act in lofty ways. Just like Allah Ta'ala is al-Quddus, just like Allah is the holy, you be a holy person. Think about what it means to be a holy person. Think about don't act, Imam al-Ghazali says, don't act like the animals. Don't think low, but think high. Think about higher aspirations. Act in a higher way. Be the best version of yourself. Now, we are not going to be completely holy the way Allah Ta'ala is, of course, but we can certainly do our best in elevating our own stance and elevating our own desires, living a higher standard of life. So this is, as Imam al-Ghazali says, as translated in the book, he says this is the counsel, right? This is the advice that he's giving us on this name for us to remember. So that's Al-Quddus. After that, we have As-Salam. As-Salam is translated as the flawless, which is a correct translation, but also As-Salam we can translate as peace or wholesome peace, which is important for us to also remember, because the word salam, from that comes the name of our religion, al-Islam. So it's flawless, Allah is flawless. Again, another aspect of this concept of Allah being complete, Allah being holy, Allah being beyond description, Allah being beyond deficiencies or limitations, etc. But also, salam is a form of peace. It is a peace that comes from this flawlessness. So the word salam and the root that it comes from, the sin, the lam, and the mim, it has so much interaction with our day-to-day life as Muslims. So this is our greeting with one another, Assalamu alaikum. So when we say Assalamu alaikum, we are asking for Allah's peace to be upon you. So Assalamu alaikum, right there, this is like a form of dua, that you're asking, may Allah's, you don't say this, but this is what the meaning is, may the peace that only can come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be on you. And then the response is wa alaikum assalam. So this is one of the beautiful aspects, that this is our greeting, that our greeting itself, our greeting, all, you walk into the mosque, you walk into a gathering, etc. You come into a room, assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam. That's what you're saying. You're invoking Allah's peace on that person. So this is the greeting of our religion. And as I said, it's also the name of our religion, Al-Islam. And in that case, or in that sense, Al-Islam comes from the meaning of the same word, but to mean submission, that we are submitting ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is flawless. And through this submission, we achieve this peace. So we can't achieve this ultimate peace, we can't achieve this ultimate flawlessness unless we enter into submission. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idkhulu fis silmi kafa. Allah says, all you who believe, enter into this faith, al-Islam, wholeheartedly, with all of your being. Darus Salam, it's also the name of paradise in the Quran. Right? So paradise is the abode of peace, the abode of flawlessness. There is no error or deficiencies in paradise. And it is, ultimate peace, everlasting peace that we ask Allah Ta'ala, inshallah, to bestow on all of us. Even in Islamic history, Baghdad, when it was the capital of the Khilafah, Baghdad, one of its names was Darus Salam, the abode of peace. So by naming things that, it's invoking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's peace, just like when we say Assalamu alaikum, on that city in that case. So when we think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's word, name rather, as-salam, one of the things that we think about is that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described himself and his nature as being flawless and as being absolute peace, Allah Ta'ala is also reminding us that this is the natural order of the created world. So the created world is not a world in which the natural order is tension and fighting and hatred and animosity, but rather the natural order of things is supposed to be peace. In the ancient Western world, and in other traditions as well, in which there was polytheistic belief, there was a god of war, like Mars. The name Mars is the god of war, one of the names. And in that paradigm, therefore, there is this concept that war is somehow natural, or war somehow is one of the forces of the world that we have to deal with. But we don't have that. Harb or warfare is not one of Allah's attributes or names, but it's as-salam. And therefore, we are reminded of that even in situations of conflict, because conflict does exist, the point of us solving these conflicts is to arrive at peace, which is a completely different understanding and paradigm than the other non-Islamic understandings of warfare. So Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, وَإِن جَنَحُوا لِلسِّلْمِ فَاجْنَحْ لَهُ. And if they incline towards peace, here Allah is addressing warfare. Allah Ta'ala is talking about two opposing forces, and He's addressing the Muslims, and He says, if your opponents, if your enemies in this conflict incline towards peace, meaning a cessation of warfare, then incline towards peace. Why? Because the point of warfare, as it is legislated in the Sharia, under all of the conditions for a just war, etc., the point of warfare is to arrive at peace, not to have perpetual warfare, because that is not the natural stasis of the world. The natural flow of the world is that it is an abode of peace, because this comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this then becomes a very profound thing for the believer as they interpret the world around them, that we are always looking for how we can arrive at peace, how we can arrive at the cessation of conflict, how we can stop the spilling of blood, how we can mend the wounds. Everything therefore then is seen, that is the goal. The goal is peace, because this is how Allah Ta'ala has created us and has asked of us to create this peace and to pursue it. So that's, if you think about that a little bit, that can have a lot of impact, very profound impact of one of the defining features of our paradigm versus other paradigms or other philosophies. That this is a natural way of the world. Likewise, it is also the natural way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. So therefore, we cannot interpret some kind of act coming from Allah as being hateful or vengeful, because Allah is as-Salam. That's His name, that's His attribute, that's why we're discussing it. So there's no evil or deficiency, hasha lillah, there's no evil or deficiency that belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He is as-Salam. Therefore, if we see something bad happening, and I want to come back to that, we see something bad happening. If we see something bad happening, we have defined it as bad or negative, but when we think about it as an idea, when we remember that this is something that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we must also remember that there must be a greater reason or greater wisdom behind it. And this really is one of the key answers to how we as believers solve or answer the problem of evil. Because when we say something is evil, we are using our metrics. You see a natural calamity that happens. You say, that's so bad, that's so horrific. And it is. I mean, that's how we should describe it that way. But that doesn't mean that from the perspective of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being al-Quddus and being as-Salam, that doesn't mean that that's it. There might be another reason behind it, that catastrophe that we see in this world might very well be the cause for those people's salvation in the hereafter. So if you take a step back and you look at everything from the perspective of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the point of view of the beginning of creation till the end of creation, there's more that can come. So therefore it becomes a way for us to interpret what we see. Sometimes we get sick, but our sickness prevents us from getting a worse type of sickness or a worse type of disease. Sometimes we falter, but that faltering or that failure prevents something greater that we did not see that was going to come. So therefore we should think well of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We shouldn't, think bad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so that's as-Salam. So we've done al-Quddus and as-Salam, and then we'll do al-Mu'min, the faithful. We say a mu'min in our language to each other, the believer. But mu'min is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the faithful. And this is one of His divine traits, that many people have doubt in the belief of God or the existence of God. But we are called on to have absolute belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have a type of belief that is not wavering and that is not full of skepticism and doubts. Through our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as al-Mu'min, now al-Mu'min here not as, we are believers, we are mu'mineen, not that, but Allah as al-Mu'min, when we understand that Allah is the faithful, al-mu'min, we understand from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes our security, comes our aman. وَأَطْعَمَهُم مِّن جُوعٍ وَآمَنَهُم مِّن خَوْفٍ وَأَطْعَمَهُم مِّن جُوعٍ وَآمَنَهُم مِّن خَوْفٍ. Allah ta'ala provides us our sustenance and provides us aman, provides us security from that which we are fearful of. So all of the things that we are ultimately fearful of, all of the things that can cause harm to us, ultimately, where does that security come from? It comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to have that security, therefore, we have to have that belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So our relationship with this name, al-mu'min, is a reminder for us to have belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to have unwavering belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to doubt. Now, it's easy to say that. Some people might say, but I have this problem, but I have that problem. Well, one of the whole reasons why it's important that we go through the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that we understand these different aspects of what, when we say La ilaha illallah, we want to understand what that means. So these are all like different aspects of the shahada in a sense. So when we're finished with all of this and we say La ilaha illallah, or you hear just the word Allah, you're going to remember all of these descriptions are all in that name, Allah. That's why we began with that name. You know, the name that indicates and that encompasses all of these attributes. So we're trying to deepen that understanding. So al-mu'min, Allah Ta'ala is the faithful. He provides us because He is has the ultimate divine faith. Therefore, He is the one that provides for us our security, our sustenance, and protects us. It's a reminder as well, this name and this attribute, as we, ultimately we seek safety. As a, as a species, ultimately we seek to be safe. If we are safe from an enemy, if we have food on the table, if we have a roof over our heads, we're not, when you sleep at night, you're not worried like some bear is going to come and attack you. We don't think about these things, but that's essentially what we need to survive. If we have those things, then we have safety. And because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that provides that safety, and then in exchange of that safety and that comfort, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls on us to have faith in Him and to therefore devote some of our actions, our devotional actions, our ibadat to Him. Allah Ta'ala also in this is a lesson that we are not to harm other people. We are not to be the cause of other people's harm and feeling of unsafety. And this is one of the attributes of us as believers. The Prophet ﷺ said, the believer is the person whom others are safe in their presence. One of the definitions of us being a believer is that when I'm present, you don't have to worry about me harming you. You don't have to worry about me cursing you. You don't have to worry about me attacking you. You don't have to worry about me stealing from you. The Prophet ﷺ said the believer is honest in their speech. When they promise, they fulfill. They're not going to harm somebody with their limbs, with their tongue, etc. So therefore, just like we in the relationship between creation and the Creator, just like we seek to have protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by worshiping Allah through this name, al-mu'min, we want to also be the security for other people. I remember, and I say this, as just an anecdote. I don't want people to think that I'm, positing that I'm an example. Please, this is just an anecdote. But I remember when I was in high school, alhamdulillah, I never drank or anything like that. Alhamdulillah, Allah protected me from that. And because all of my friends' parents knew that, most of the time, when people wanted to go out on the weekend and hang out, they said, oh, Tarek is going to be there. Then, they know that there's going to be no drinking or drugs or anything like that. So they're like, oh, you can go out. And that's on a bigger scale how we need to be for our neighbors. We need people to feel safe in our comforts. I know another Muslim family that I grew up with along the same lines, is that they would always let their children go to that Muslim parent's house for parties, or the Muslim family was the preferred family in the class to host all of the class parties and everything throughout all of the years, because they knew that there were no guns in the house and that there were no alcohol in the house. And that's a form of safety. That's a form of us being, a person you can rely on. In English we say you're a stand-up person. We need to be like that for each other, of course, for each other, but also for the wider community. We should never, in our mosque, for example, in our example, alhamdulillah, I know for certain that our neighbors are never worried, that we're going to do something crazy, that all of a sudden they're going to hear like the adhan belted out on some loudspeaker. We know that, right? We go to extreme lengths to make sure that our neighbors are comfortable, secure. We invite them to the mosque, we feed them, when we have our iftars, when we have our events, when we have a function, we let them know. We get the police to help us with the conducting the traffic and all of that. Why? Because we want people to feel safe in our presence. So when you see the Muslim, when you see the believer, you are safe. Now take that, something that we can all understand. Now come back to what this means as Allah Ta'ala's name and Allah Ta'ala's divine attribute. That's how we are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala is saying, when you come to me, you are safe. When you submit to me, you are safe. الَّذِي أَطْعَمَكُم مِّن جُوعٍ وَآمَنَهُم مِّن خَوْفٍ. The one who has provided you with your food and drink and has provided you security from that which you are scared of, provided you security and safety from fear. So this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name, Al-Mu'min, the faithful. And then the last one for today, Al-Muhaymin. And again, I'm still trying to find the right ratio of names. Some names, there are longer commentaries. Some of them are a little bit shorter. So I might add a couple more next week. But anyway, Al-Muhaymin, the guardian. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Muhaymin, the guardian. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of the universe, of course, it goes without saying. But therefore, he is also the guardian of the universe. Now, when we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of the universe, that also reminds us that we have answers to the three big questions. Where do we come from? What are we doing? And where are we going? And these are paradigmatic questions. In the Western paradigm, usually, but not always, those questions are end questions. Human thought is going towards understanding those questions. For us, we would go crazy if we didn't know the answer to those questions. So for us, those are beginning questions. We have to have the answers to those questions as believers, or else we would go insane. Can you imagine living your whole life not knowing where you come from, what you're doing here, and where you're going? So this is a feature, and again, it's not black and white, but usually in the Western paradigm, particularly in the modern paradigm, people are still trying to figure out that stuff. But for us, we have the answers to those because those are beginning questions, not end questions. So where do we come from? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. What are we doing here? Allah ta'ala has asked us to worship him, has asked us to purify ourselves, tazkiyah, and has asked us to build the world around us in a just way, imara. Where are we going? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. For us, those are very easy questions. Any Muslim child who's attended Sunday school will be able to answer those questions. And therefore, because we have those big questions as part of, the cement, of which our foundation is built and held together, we remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the guardian of all of that. Allah is al-Muhaymin. He is the guardian of the universe. That this universe wasn't created abstractly, wasn't created randomly, wasn't created without rules and principles that are followed, sunnahs we say of the universe. Rather, there is law and order in that which Allah Ta'ala has created. And Allah is the guardian of that. And Allah has asked us to do certain things, and Allah has told us that He will take care of certain things. So He guards and He protects the universe around us. Now, Allah Ta'ala is the guardian of the universe in His knowledge. There is nothing outside the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, that would be putting a limitation on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala is the guardian of the universe through His actions. We believe, as Allah is al-Muhaymin, as Allah is the guardian, when we look at that from the point of view of His actions, that means that Allah Ta'ala is acting in the universe at every moment. At every moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the guardian. At every micro moment, Allah Ta'ala is sustaining us, is giving us life, is creating us constantly. So, in Allah's knowledge and in Allah's action and in Allah's absoluteness, He is the one that is the guardian of our creation and our universe. And that's something that we can't do. We can be guardians of some little thing that we've created, but we can't be guardians in that absolute way. Some of the ulama, when they talk about Allah Ta'ala as the guardian, as al-Muhaymin, they mention, and this is one of the things that Imam al-Ghazali mentions in the book, is that this is one of the names that is shared with the previous religious traditions. Maybe not exactly the way it sounds, Muhaymin, but that meaning that Allah is the guardian of the universe through His knowledge, through His actions, and through His ability, His qudra, that Allah Ta'ala is able to create and to be the guardian. Allah knows everything that will happen, that has happened, that will happen. Allah Ta'ala, in His actions, His continual actions, therefore those three unique things, Allah's knowledge, actions, and ability, summarize Allah as the guardian and tie back into answering those three essential questions. Rather than end questions for us, they are essential. We must know the answers to those questions for us, therefore, to live sanely and in comfort. So those are the names for today. Al-Quddus, As-Salam, Al-Mu'min, Al-Muhaymin. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. Now, as a reminder, I put in the chat two links. One link is to a PDF, or maybe it's an image rather. I can't remember which one right now. Of the 99 names, it's a poster image that has the names in Arabic and English in the order that we're following, because somebody has asked for that. The second link is a link to YouTube. I'm sorry, I think I put the link for YouTube twice. It is to a melodious recitation of the 99 names. I guarantee you, if you listen to this long enough, it's only a few minutes, you'll end up memorizing the 99 names, inshallah. And my challenge to myself and to you is that we should try to learn them, because the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever learns them and memorizes them, Allah Ta'ala will grant them paradise, inshallah. Someone asks, Dar es-Salam is mentioned several times in the Quran. Please give some context and what is the best description. So Dar es-Salam is one of the names of paradise. And when the description of paradise is given, and inshallah we enter, all of us inshallah together, the angel says, Assalamun alaykum tibtum. Peace be unto you, you have been made purified and radiant. At-tib in Arabic is like a scent, like a beautiful scent. So the angels say you are like beautifully perfumed. Peace be on you, you're radiant and beautiful. So therefore, one of the names of paradise is Dar es-Salam, because that's ultimate peace and tranquility. Is that? That's the ultimate safety. That's when you know that there's no more concern, that there's no more anxiety, that there's no more conflict. It's just pure perfection, everlasting perfection. And that's sort of how, or not sort of, but that's how paradise is described to us in the Quran and described to us, copiously through the hadith literature, inshallah. Another question is, what is the difference between Muhaymin and Mawla? So Muhaymin, we talked about, the guardian. And Mawla is like my master, or like my superior. So we refer to our teachers as Maulana. You know, if my teacher was here, say Maulana, any of the teachers, not one person. It's just like a Maulana. You know, because you're like my teacher. So when you use that word for Allah, Ya Maulana, which we do use as well, you know, then you extrapolate that Allah is you know, Allah is the King of Kings. Allah is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's like Maulana with a capital M, and then when you refer to it as a teacher, it's like Maulana with like a small m. But it's a generic reference. It's not one of the 99 names and attributes. It's like Rabb. You know, we have Al-Rabb, the God, or Ya Rabbana, you know, or Oh God. It's the same, Ya Maulana, you know, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's calling on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and calling on the divine. You can think of it. So when you call on the divine by using that, you know, general name, you would understand that all of the attributes that we're talking about are encompassed in that. Why else would you call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unless you believed in all of these attributes? We also refer to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as Maulana. So depending on the context. Now, some people that are not familiar with the language, they get, and this is actually a really good point, they get confused. They think that, you know, you're referring to the Prophet as God. Well, no, because no one believes that the Prophet is divine. You know, we know that. But Maulana, when I use it for a human, it means something different than when I use it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like if my parents told me, you know, be merciful with your siblings, no one ever assumes in that statement that my parents are saying be merciful like God is, be God's version of mercy. You know, there's no comparison. So that's very important, actually. So I'm glad that question came up. So I have something's dry. Let me just. Okay, can you please resend the link? You're not able to see them? Okay, let me see if I just copy and paste. I'm resending the links. I hope everyone can see them. There are two links. The one is to the sort of poster image of the 99 names. And then the second one is to the YouTube link. What about the name Rabb that we also tend to use quite a lot across language and culture? Ya Rabb. Okay, so we talked about that. So, you know, God in English, you know, capital G-O-D, God. That would be Rabb. You know, Ya Rabb, oh God. Ya Allah. You know, Allah is a non-translatable word. It's like if the Jews saying Yahweh. You know, you're not going to refer, it's like a name that you don't translate. It is that in its original language. And I remember when I showed you the little poster of Allah, and I showed you if you remove the letters and things like that. So Allah is Islam's unique name for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah. Rabb would be like God. Maulana would be like, you know, our master or our savior, referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like that. And of course, when you call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that fashion, then you are referring to all of these qualities. But when I say, you know, yes salam, right? Then I would call on Allah Ta'ala using that name if we were like experiencing some kind of conflict, because I would be trying to call on Allah Ta'ala to manifest on us with that divine trait. Yes, salam. And that's why, going back to a couple of weeks ago, it might even be the first or the second lecture, when we kind of brought this topic up about the different names that are used for the different levels of the self that are invoked a certain amount of time. You know, why do we have certain names that we invoke for certain spiritual conditions? Is that you are asking Allah to manifest on you with that divine name to help you move and improve yourself from one level to the next. But when you're saying Allah, Ya Rabb, Ya Maulana, then those are, you're calling on Allah with all of them together. Oops. Isn't Al-Muhaymin's meaning Al-Muhaymin معناها Al-Musaytir? Yes, يعني it can mean that, but remember I said in the beginning that I am going to follow the translation of the translators of the Ghazali 99 books just to make the translation job easier. So they went with Al-Muhaymin as the guardian. Al-Musaytir is the one whose power and command is over all things, which is a slightly different name, which is why Al-Musaytir is different than Al-Muhaymin. They have two different aspects. So I'm just trying to make it simple by going off of the translation. Okay. Where does the sequence of the 99 names come from? So there is a hadith narrated by narrated by Abu Huraira and documented in the collection of Imam al-Tirmidhi that Allah Ta'ala has 99 names, 100 minus 1. Whoever memorizes them has entered into the paradise. That hadith, there are 3 known narrations of that hadith. The most famous of is the order that we're following. That's where the order comes from. It comes from the hadith. But there are 2 lesser known narrations in which the order is slightly different and some of the names are even slightly different, which is why I said in the beginning that when we talk, when we talk about Allah's divine names, it's not just 99. Allah Ta'ala's names and attributes are infinite. And in the hadith literature and in the Quran literature, there are a couple of hundred that have been mentioned. But the 99 are famous because of the text of the hadith. And in the book that we're using sort of loosely as a guide through this discussion, the order is taken just simply from the hadith of Imam al-Tirmidhi narrated by Imam Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu. So therefore, you sort of don't have, there's like no magic, or special. It's special because it just comes from the text of the hadith. Somebody's saying that the poster didn't go through. Now I feel really bad. I mean, I just clicked on the link and I have the poster. Let me try sending the link again, but after clicking on the image. Try that link. That should be directly to the image. So the link that I just sent you guys, if you also scroll down, it's like somebody's blog. If you scroll down, there's a chart that has the Arabic name on the left. To the right of that is the transliteration, and then to the right of that is the translation. And again, the translation is slightly different than the one I'm using. So if it's helpful for people, rather than using up the time now, I can compile this and create just a separate PDF, and maybe we can send it out for the next email to the community. Maybe that would be easier. And I apologize. I just quickly found like the quickest poster image right before the Zoom call. So I did not spend so much time on that. I apologize. But I will maybe compile that for you in a nicer way. Are there any other questions? What we're going to do before we break, I'll play the YouTube video. I think I can just share my screen and do that. That will take a few minutes, so we'll end with that. But before I do that, are there any other questions that people have, either on what we discussed today or anything else? Okay, while we are told as kids that on our left hand we have 81 in Arabic, and on the right hand 18 names of Allah, which equals 99. Is this authentic? Never heard of this before. So on your left hand, we have 81 in Arabic. On the right hand, we have 18. So someone's got to show that to me. Is that authentic? I mean, I've never heard of it, which just means that I've never heard of it. But the number 81 is our faith line. 80, 81, and then 81, and then, okay, I get it now. Okay. Well, the thing about that is that that's assuming this. So 81, that's assuming that the numerals are written like this, 81 and 18. However, these are not Arabic numerals. These are Hindi numerals. Arabic numerals are like this. Those numbers that we use every day, those are Arabic numerals. These numerals here, they're called Hindi. They're from India. And from Egypt to the east of the Muslim world, for a whole bunch of historical reasons, they write with the Hindi numerals. And then from Libya all the way to the west, they write with the Arabic numerals. So I think this is just anecdotal, because there's like a little, V pyramid and one on the bottom that's 81 and 18. Sure, why not? If you want to tell kids that, there's nothing wrong with that. As a reminder, so every time you look at every time I look at my hands, I'm going to think of 81 and 18. So that's okay. Are all the names of Allah's names mentioned in the Quran? Yes and no. So there are names mentioned in the Quran, and then there are names mentioned only in the Sunnah. We said in the beginning of the class that there are 250 names of Allah Ta'ala, around 250 mentioned in the Quran, and there are about 160 mentioned throughout the Sunnah. And if you combine the two without double counting, we have around 220 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are mentioned in the primary sources. So not all of the names are just in these 99 names. We are going to go through just this version of it, just as sort of as an academic experiment or academic route. But there are other names, and then there are other names that other ulama have deduced based on inferences and things like that. So this is like its own topic, and there are rules for can you include certain names or not certain names. Okay, that was real. You are into numerology, so what does 99 minus 1 signify? In Asia, they don't write a check for 100, they add 1 and make it 101, significance. Well, the 101 in Asia, I think 1 is considered like a lucky number in the East. Because I remember when I was in Japan, I was at a shrine and there was a wedding, and they had there's a special car, like taxi, that they hire for the weddings, and the license plate is like 111, And I remember my guide was saying, "Oh, you see, the license plate is 111 because this is the one is like a lucky number." So I think Allah alam, Allah only knows. I think the adding 1 to the 100 to make it 101 is a lucky thing. Why does so the hadith is lillahi tis'atun isman mi'atan illa wahida. Allah has 99 names, 100 minus 1. That's from the phrase of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I think that that's simply to emphasize that name, that number of 99 in the hadith. Now I'm sure there are other Sufi commentaries that I'm just not able to recall at this time, but there is a significance to it that escapes me. If you give me until next time, inshallah, I will try to remember that. Do I have a name that really resonates with me? Always appreciate your perspective. Well, that's like a bigger conversation. So because I am trained in the Sufi tradition, and that's also part of my training, I went through, as I mentioned, 13 names. And then from the 13 names, I went to these 99 names. And then after the end of all of that, which took me a couple of years, the name that I invoke in my personal practice is the name Allah. But that requires, that kind of training and things like that. So in my default, like as a person, when I'm thinking or when I'm like, Allah is what comes to mind. However, if there are certain circumstances or, something might happen in front of me, Ya Latif or something like that might come. But for me, the name that I use in my personal life is the name Allah, and that is the name that I was trained to use, and that just comes from that. And again, that's personal. So I arrived at that through this personal journey. Senda has a commentary on the 101. They make it an odd number, which is preferred as per the sunnah. Yeah, sure, I guess. But I still think the one thing is it's like because it's 101, so it's like balance and has something to do with luck. I really think that's where it comes from. But I have not heard that. But by all means, if you're writing checks to ICCP, feel free to add digits and zeros and to move the decimal point way to the right. That's very good, inshallah. We will accept that. And we can establish our own sunnah at ICCP. Okay, I'm going to play, can just someone acknowledge, is my screen shared? Is it? Not yet, okay.
The Bridge wallet for real is my type of wallet. Once you get used to a wallet like this, the old
host disabled attendee. Oh, I'm getting a notification that I'm unable to share the screen because I'm no longer the host.
It's a modern wallet. It holds up to 12 cards.
Tarek, just give me a second. This is Roman. Assalamu alaikum.
Oh, the training wheels. Brother Roman is back. I'm not.
Hold on. No. Let me transfer you.
Okay.
Okay. Hold on.
We're trying to. So many things I have to figure out. There's a green. Yeah, I know there's a green tap to share, but
now try now.
Okay.
You should be able to.
Okay. Can you guys see this YouTube thing?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna play it. It's 3 minutes and 25 seconds. Actually, let me just
Yeah, make it full screen, please.
Okay. So was everyone able to hear that?
Say yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, good. So that's just, one version, one melody, but it's pretty standard. However, missing the name Al-Ahad, I think Al-Ahad is not in that. والذي لا إله إلا هو الرحمن الرحيم الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر الخالق البارئ المصور الغفار القهار الوهاب الرزاق الفتاح العليم القابض الباسط الخافض الرافع المعز المذل السميع البصير الحكم العدل اللطيف الخبير الحليم العظيم الغفور الشكور العلي الكبير الحفيظ المغيث الحسيب الجليل الكريم الرقيب المجيب الواسع الحكيم الودود المجيد الباعث الشهيد الحق الوكيل القوي المتين الولي الحميد المحسي المبدئ المعيد المحيي المميت الحي القيوم الواجد الماجد الواحد. Sanda is saying الأحد. This is الواحد الصمد القادر المقتدر المقدم المؤخر الأول الآخر الظاهر الباطن الولي المتعالي البر التواب المنتقم العفو الرؤوف مالك الملك ذو الجلال والإكرام المقسط الجامع الغني النافع الهادي البديع الرشيد. So in this narration, Al-Ahad is not one of the names. It's Al-Wahid. So that could have been another. So again, this hadith or this narration of the hadith is not all of them, but these are the ones that we have. But I will double check. 67. Okay, I don't have the book in front of me. I only have this little note card, which I believe is the. Okay, I'll look into that on Al-Ahad. So let me just make a note. So my homework is Al-Ahad, 67, and then Y, 100 minus 1. I know there's an answer to that, but it escapes me at the moment. In the poster, 67 is Al-Ahad. So maybe I got the wrong poster. So, it is very possible that the poster is incongruent with the book. The book is what we're going with because that's the narration of Imam at-Tirmidhi's hadith. So maybe the best thing for me to do is to just cut and paste that, or cut out that page of the book and send that. So and this reminds us that there are different narrations of that same hadith. So not all the 99 named hadith are all the 99 names are the same. I apologize if the poster confused. That's my fault. Some of the names are signifiers like Ala. They all signify something related to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's divine essence. So these are all various attributes. And if you think of that, what we're saying as people that believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah ta'ala is manifesting on creation with these different names. So, you see a child that's crying and the mother comes and consoles the child. That's a manifestation of Allah's lutf, of Allah's gentleness. You walk into a room and everyone is calm and at ease and happy. This is a manifestation of Allah's salam, so on and so forth. Allah begins with Allah as the first divine name and doesn't include Ahad. Other books, posters start with Ar-Rahman and include Ahad. So like I said, just to review, there are 3 known narrations of the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu that Allah has 99 names. In those 3, one of them is very popular, or very common rather. That is the narration that Imam al-Ghazali uses to comment. There are other narrations of that same hadith in which there are some names that are different. My understanding or my recollection is that Al-Ahad is one of those that might be in the other narrations. Al-Ahad is another version of Al-Wahid. Wahid is one, Ahad. Ahad is a very special name because this is the name that Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu was invoking while he was being tortured in Mecca. And when the companions, after he was bought and freed by Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, the companions, they asked him, why did you, or the Prophet ﷺ rather asked him, why did you mention that name, Ahadun Ahad, Ahadun Ahad? And Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu, he said, because this was the name that was most displeasing to them. So there is a special place for this name in our tradition. It is the name that was invoked by Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu, Ahadun Ahad, Ahadun Ahad, radiallahu anhu. So again, there are different names that we'll not even find, in any of the narrations that are out there. So we're not going to talk about all the names, but we're going to talk about the commonly recited 99 names. I promise I'll do a better effort for next class to provide the 99 names that I'm going to go through. And then Brother Muhsin is reminding us that we have a book in our library called Thy Names, which is compiled by Dr. Abdul Noor, who's a founding member of ICCP. It's beautifully calligraphed and it's printed in Bangladesh. He donated all the collections of the sale of that to be given to ICCP, and it's being sold for $45. So that's another great book. So I'm sorry if I confused everyone with the poster. Again, my bad. I'll fix that problem, inshallah. So is there anything last minute urgent before I think Maghrib is upon us, or will be upon us very soon? If not, we ask Allah Ta'ala to bless us, to protect us, inshallah. And Brother Muhsin, actually, we spoke right before the class, or right before Jummah, actually, and he reminded me that I keep forgetting to conclude the class in the same way, and I'm very embarrassed because the way the salawat that I end the class with, as I've mentioned to you before, is the salawat of Imam al-Shafi'i radiallahu anhu, and it is a tradition that we end our classes with that salawat. It's a tradition in Al-Azhar that when students would pass their exams, rather than the teacher saying you passed, they would recite the salawat. And as a Shafi'i and Azhari, I'm embarrassed that I keep forgetting to do that. So I'm glad that Brother Muhsin reminded me of that. So I'll remember to conclude that way each class. There is, somebody posted a YouTube clip. This is an English spoken word version that some shared with us last year. That is nice, great. Okay, and then small announcements that I say with great trepidation, but private prayer is allowed at the mosque, but masks and rugs and social distancing must be kept. So I say that with great trepidation because I'm afraid I say that and it's gonna be like a stampede at the mosque. But so there are private prayer. We're still not doing Jummah, or all the classes are still gonna be online, all of that stuff. But private prayers, you're driving out and about and you need to pray Dhuhr, you can go to the mosque and pray, but you have to keep the mask on and you have to keep social distancing. Anas is going to be there for Fajr and Isha prayer. So those are also happening. So how do you pray the Jama'ah prayer, the congregation prayer, by social distancing? Is that everyone they're not going to stand shoulder to shoulder, but everyone is going to stand apart, and that is permissible given the current conditions. So if you happen to be at the mosque and everyone's going to pray together, don't stand like shoulder to shoulder, but everyone will stand apart social distancing wise to be able to conduct the prayer and to maintain the safety because of the necessity of doing that. So I guess that's like our phase one, ICCP phase one, post-COVID-19. We ask Allah Ta'ala to keep us safe. And I know we're all itching to get back. I'm very confident that we'll be back soon, and we will remember the fondness of Zoom, but we will appreciate being back in the mosque soon, but we're not quite there yet, inshallah. Having said, so we need to carry a thermometer. Is this a condition, Brother Muhsin? You know, whoever's in the mask making business and hand thermometer making business is definitely making a killing now. Oh, Senda is carrying a thermometer. Okay, so enter the mosque at your peril. You have to deal with Senda. She is she is the doorkeeper. When there's a king, there's somebody that's the hajib of the king. Hajib comes from hijab. The hajib's job is to prevent you from getting to the king, right? They play defense, so they interfere. So you want to go to the king, and then the hajib, oh, come here, I'll help you, just come this way. They take you this way. So Senda is our hajib. She's going to be at the door, and she will turn you away. If the thermometer gun she has goes off or makes funny noise, turn back to your car and run away. So Senda is the carrying a thermometer and will guard us, inshallah. She says, indeed, alhamdulillah. Having said that, I think Maghrib is coming in now. So we'll stop here, inshallah, and we'll see each other soon. Allahumma salli afdala salatin ala as'adi makhluqatika sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala آله وصحبه وسلم عدد معلوماتك ومداد كلماتك كلما ذكرك الذاكرون وغفل عن ذكره الغافلون. See you inshallah soon. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Everyone have a good weekend.